I came to a bloody conclusion, and I won't say it as if it applies to all people my age, but stick with me and I promise everything will be fine. I don't think I'm ready for Nick Cave.
I'm going to the river where the current rushes by.
Don't take that as a diss. Nick Cave stands with a legacy as large as his forehead. It's ridiculous for me to deny how robust and fantastical his music is, how creatively he challenges the typical relationship between audience and narrator, and his poetry that runs from laughable to shattering. I can appreciate the craft, but I think as a young, restless music fanatic, one who loves vibrant, wacky ideas, I'm not ready to feel Nick Cave's music that is smouldering, aging, seasoning like wearing your dad's old clothes or a manky bit of cheese. I can be smart, but I'm not wise, and I haven't gathered the same lifetime of experience that Cave has, let alone my fucking driver's license. This sense of wisdom informs the way that Cave writes poetry, and in the case of Carnage, the way that Warren Ellis arranges its backdrop. So dusty and grayscale, it's the sonic equivalent of a bowl of porridge sitting in a room with no sunlight. Carnage is a record influenced by grief, longing, and ennui, in the same way that Ghosteen and especially Push the Sky Away was, making them all chums at a lunch table, swapping muesli bars with abattoir blues, giving side-eye to Let Love In, and telling the good son to eat shit. But in the same way that Push the Sky Away increases its scope to the metaphysics of the world itself, Carnage is informed by universal uncertainty. In other words, what the fuck is going to happen, and what the fuck are we supposed to do? Well, here, Cave is either writing about some paradise he aspires to be at instead of this shithole, and when he describes the shithole, he makes sure you know it's one, employing imagery so at odds with itself, it completely ruins your chance of making full sense of what he meant by a Botticelli Venus with a penis. It's easy to forget that Nick Cave has one hell of a fucking cheek. His infamous murder ballad Stagger Lee always felt like some deliberate prank instead of a legit spine tingler, and then there's also that Casey Affleck diss track in the Jesse James movie. You'd think these things could have been preluded with Cave groaning, "Reader beware, you're in for a scare." The absolute menace harnesses his full aggression on White Elephant when he says the F word like a naughty little boy.
I'll shoot you in the fucking face if you think I'm coming around here.
This song speaks from a seemingly invincible body of evil, from the get-go referencing the George Floyd protests last year, which accents the tyranny in Cave's later threats of police force, raining gas and salt, and the big fat elephant gun that'll shoot you in the fucking face. The track takes a bloody bizarre turn though, as if to flash back to the times when Nick Cave was flirting with the spiritual splendor of gospel music. The song suddenly smiles from a minor to a major key, and the malicious tone of the song doesn't even blend into the next section, it just bloody disappears. The elephant gun must have been aimed at the momentum of this LP, because no doubt the pacing gets pins and needles in its legs by track 3. Track 3! Hand of God smacks of this fantastic tension that evokes the feeling of fate being fucked with by some bearded pixie at a control panel, and Old Time carries this unnerve so well until we get to slow tracks like Carnage way too soon. The illusion breaks and I lose interest, but I also get it, because pins and needles do show up when you're not ready to get them, so what do you do at that point? Of course, you have to wait it out. It's called Carnage, not sausage. You should barely expect it to be a jolly time. Being significantly younger than Nick Cave, I'm 42 by the way, I long for escape in music, and there's a grim realism to Nick Cave and Warren Ellis's concepts that feels so legit that I no longer see their music as an escape, just a very sincere, grounded reflection of how things are. Cave wrote these songs sitting on a balcony, he says, which explains the track title, Balcony Man. Although I could stop right there with that phenomenal observation, it's the meta in the track that's significant. After tracks of surreal imagery and allusions to significant global events, Cave suddenly turns the camera on himself as if to say that the only thing that can make sense to an aging poet perpetually detached from the rapidly mutating landscape of planet Earth is himself. It reminds me of the Frank O'Hara poem Steps, where the stanzas are a string of non-sequitive observations in New York, blanketed with a tone that is claustrophobic, violent, and unsafe. But the final lines of the poem take a breather to admire how good it still is to even be alive, to get out of bed, drink too much coffee, punch too many darts, and love you so much. I gotta wonder how much more important that sentiment will be to me by the time that I'm 63.